Session number 5 of lesson number 4, materials, metals and non-metals. In previous sessions we have seen the physical properties of metals and non-metals. We have also seen some of the chemical properties of metals and non-metals, such as reactions with oxygen, then reaction with water, reactions with acids, and reactions with bases. And today we are going to start the displacement reactions on the page number 50. Okay, now let me start the displacement reaction on the page number 50. To understand the displacement reaction, we have to recall the activity of the reaction between copper sulfate and iron that you have performed in class 7. We have discussed about one of the displacement reaction in the class 7 about the reaction between copper sulfate and iron, and that reaction we have to discuss. Before that, to know more about it, let us observe some more reactions of that kind. Okay, to understand this, we have to discuss the activity number 4.8. Take 500 ml beakers. We have to take 500 ml beakers and we have to label them A, B, C, D and E. Take about 50 ml of water in each beaker. Dissolve in each beaker a teaspoonful of each substance as indicated in figure 4.6a. Keep the beakers undisturbed for some time. Record your observations in your notebook. See, this activity is very simple. We have to set 5 beakers of 100 ml and we have to take 5 beakers of 100 ml and nearly about 50 ml of water in each of the beaker, and we have to add the other substance in the beaker. In which quantity and what matter? Let me see. Beaker A should contain copper sulfate plus zinc granule. Beaker B should contain copper sulfate plus iron nail. Beaker C should contain zinc sulfate plus copper turnings. Beaker D should contain iron sulfate plus copper turnings. Beaker E should contain zinc sulfate plus iron nail. Okay, so these all the mixtures we have to take in the respective beakers such as A, B, C, D and E, and we have to observe the changes that takes place in the color of the beaker or any other changes, okay, that we have to note. Before conducting any experiment, we have to focus on the previous things, what is the nature, color and the observation of the previous beakers such as A, B, C, D and E. Okay, you can see very clearly in the figure 4.6a. Figure 4.6a shows the nature of the reactant before the reaction. You can see beaker A, B, C, D and E. These all color indicate they are the color of the reactant before the reaction, and figure B indicate after reaction what changes takes place. So you may be curious to know, after the reaction between the reactant what changes takes place. We are going to discuss it in detail. Okay, beaker A was having copper sulfate plus zinc granule. Beaker B was having copper sulfate plus iron nail. Beaker C was having zinc sulfate plus copper turnings. Beaker D was having iron sulfate plus copper turnings. Beaker E was having the zinc sulfate plus iron nail. So if you observe carefully, the changes takes place only in the beaker number A and B, and there is no change in the beaker C, D and E. So we are going to talk about it, what reaction exactly took place in the beaker number A and B. Okay, and why there is no change in beaker C, D and E. Okay, now let me see the page number 51. What changes do you observe in the various beakers? We have read that one metal displaces another metal from its compound in aqueous solution. In beaker A, zinc replaces copper from copper sulfate. That is why the blue color copper sulfate disappears and a powdery red mass of copper is deposited at the bottom of the beaker. The reaction can be represented as follows: copper sulfate, that is CuSO4, plus zinc, that is Zn, which gives zinc sulfate, that is ZnSO4, plus copper, that is Cu. See, to understand exactly what is meant by displacement reaction, we must know the basic principle behind it. We know that one metal can displace another metal from its compound if it is in aqueous solution form. One metal can displaces another metal from its compound in aqueous solution. So, in the example number A, or in the example of beaker number A, zinc replaces the copper from copper sulfate, means zinc displaces the copper from the copper sulfate. A metal can displace another metal from its compound in aqueous solution. In beaker A, zinc replaces copper from copper sulfate. Due to that, the blue color of the copper sulfate disappears and powdery red mass of copper is deposited at the bottom of the beaker. That you can see in the figure 4.6b, beaker number A, the change can be seen. The blue color of the copper sulfate completely disappears. Okay, and that also can be shown with the help of the chemical reaction that is shown on the textbook. Copper sulfate, that is CuSO4 plus zinc Zn, which is blue in color, which gives zinc sulfate, that is ZnSO4 plus copper sulfate. The zinc sulfate becomes colorless and the copper sulfate becomes red. You can repeat this reaction for the beaker number B, as the displacement reaction also will take place for the beaker number B. You can write down the reaction taking place in the beaker B in the similar manner. Okay, here the Pahili have the question. I have understood the reactions of these all the things takes place in the beaker A, B, but I'm still confused why there is no change in beakers C, D and E. As we discussed, the displacement reaction will take place in the beaker number A and B, but it will not take place in the beaker number C, D and E. Okay, so why there is no reaction takes place in the beaker number C, D and E? Let me try to find out the answer for this question. There could have been a displacement of zinc by copper in beaker C and iron in beaker E. Similarly, iron could be displaced by copper in beaker D. Since we do not see any change in beaker C, we can infer that copper is not able to replace zinc from the zinc sulfate. But why? When the zinc can replace copper in a beaker A, why cannot copper replace zinc in beaker C? Remember that science is not arbitrary. It follows the definite rules based on facts. And the rule is here that zinc is more reactive than copper and iron. A more reactive metal can replace a less reactive metal, but less reactive one cannot replace a more reactive metal. Now you can understand why there are no displacement reactions in beakers D and E also. Can you guess the sequence of metals from more reactive to less reactive among zinc, iron and copper? See, as we have started the point displacement reaction, we must know some of the basic things as they have discussed here. In a beaker A and B, the displacement reaction occurred that we have seen, we have discussed. But what about beaker C, D and E? We should know some of the rules that takes place that are very important to understand the reaction that takes place in the beaker C, D and E. Okay, you can see in the beaker number C, zinc sulfate and copper, where the zinc is not able to replace the copper. In iron sulfate and in zinc sulfate in the beaker D and E also the same things can be seen. One rule that we are going to talk here: the displacement reaction can take place only when a more reactive metal can replace a less reactive metal. Means a more reactive metal can replace less reactive metal, but less reactive metal cannot replace more reactive metal. Means if the reactive metal that is present in a given reaction, that is most important. That is means a more reactive metal only can replace a less reactive metal, but less reactive one cannot replace the more reactive metal. Now you can understand why there is no displacement reaction takes place in beaker D and E also. You can get the idea about it. Okay, you must know the basic things regarding this. Whenever the displacement reaction or whenever any chemical reaction takes place, we must know the more reactive metals and less reactive metals. That is, zinc can replace copper in beaker A, and why cannot in copper replace zinc in beaker C? Means more reactive metal can replace less reactive metal, but less reactive it cannot replace the more reactive metal. Okay, so this was about the displacement reaction, and now we are going to start the last point of this lesson, that is uses of metals and non-metals. Uses of metals and non-metals. You should be able to guess why metals are used in making machinery, automobiles, aeroplanes, trains, satellites, industrial gadgets, then cooking utensils, water boilers, etc. You are also familiar with the uses of non-metals. Here are some interesting ones. We are sure that you will guess them right. Okay. This point is regarding the uses of metals and non-metals. If we think about, or if we talk about the metals, the list is, there is a large variety of the uses of for the metals. Just now I discussed that for making the machineries, automobiles, aeroplanes, trains, satellites, industrial gadgets, cooking utensils, water boilers, etc. You are also familiar with the uses of some non-metals. Here are some interesting ones. See the non-metals uses. Non-metals is essential for our life, which have all living beings inhale during breathing. Non-metal is the most important part that we inhale during the breathing. Then we can talk about the various gases. Non-metals used in fertilizers to enhance the growth of plants. Non-metals are used in the fertilizers which enhance the growth of the plants. Non-metals used in the water purification process. Non-metals are also used in the water purification process. Then non-metals used in the purple colored solution which is applied on wounds as an antiseptic. Whenever we get injured or whenever we get the little injury, at that time whatever antiseptic is applied on the skin, on the wound, that purple colored solution is also made from the non-metal. Non-metal used in the crackers. We mostly like the crackers, and these crackers are made from the non-metals. Okay, so these all the things or whatever I have discussed, that all about the uses of non-metals. Now the uses of non-metals, it's also it will be a huge list if we try to make. So your homework is to write the uses of metals and non-metals. Okay, you have to write. You may add some more uses of metals and non-metals from your experiences. Okay, now we are on the page number 52. I heard that magnetism is found in plants. In what form is it found in them? See, actually the role of magnesium in the plant is is very important, and we are going to talk in detail, but you try to find out about it. Okay, the uses of magnesium. For your kind of information, there are many uses of some minerals for the plant, so magnesium also plays an important role. You try to find out. The doctor reported iron deficiency in my body. Where is iron in my body? This question is asked by the Bujo. Doctor told him that your body is contain a lack of or contain a deficiency of the iron. Then Bujo is confused that is my body contain the iron. So if you try to talk about it, then our body contain the iron, and you can get the details from your parents, or you can also get the details from the internet. And whenever we'll come in the school, at that time also we'll talk about it. Okay, our body contain the iron, and you also try to find out what is the role of the iron in our body. Okay, in our blood. In class 7 you are learned that in a chemical reaction new substances are formed. These substances are different from those which underwent the reaction. Now if a substance cannot be broken down further by the chemical reaction, by cooling, heating, or by electrolysis, it is called element. See, the basic word element is most important in the chemical reaction. Let me describe here. The reaction contains two most important parts, such as before the reaction and after the reaction. Before the reaction, the most important part is the reactant, and after the reaction, the most important part is the product. So the substance which never broke down after various processes such as cooling, heating, and electrolysis is called as an element. Sulfur is an element. Sulfur is an element. Sample of an element contains only one kind of atom. The atom of the element remains unaffected by physical changes in the element. For example, an atom of liquid sulfur would be exactly the same of the atom of solid or vapor sulfur. See, if we think about the element contains the basic contents as the atom. An atom of every element is same. Means even if it is present in the form of solid, even if it is present in the form of liquid, or even if it is present in the form of vapor, it is same. Although we have an infinite variety of substances in universe, the number of elements forming these substances is limited. Although we have infinite variety of substances in universe, the number of elements forming these substances is limited. There are no more than of 94 naturally occurring elements. See, the most important part, there are total 94 natural elements found in the nature. Okay, naturally 94 elements are found. An important classification of element is in terms of metals and non-metals. If the elements are divided, they are divided in the two basic forms such as metals and non-metals, and most of the elements are the metals. Out of 94, the most of them are metals. The remaining are either non-metals or metalloids. Now we have discussed the little part about it. What elements are called as the metals, what elements are called as non-metals, and what is meant by metalloids. Okay, we are going to study it in detail. Metalloids possess character of both metals and non-metals, as we have discussed before. Metalloids are the elements which possess the properties of the metals also and non-metals also. Okay, try to frame the questions as much as possible. You can frame the questions and solve the exercise of the lesson. Okay, the next lesson we will start at the next session. Thank you.